Hello and welcome to this engineering philosophy live stream. So this is a test with my new setup. Not sure if it will work alright, so I'm also offline recording this and hopefully it works live, but let's see. Today I want to make another video on the topic of free will because I was recently notified of a very good 3-video series by the BBC on free will, looking into it from different topics and really presenting one of the most balanced views that I've seen so far. But still, even the scientists I agree most with, there's something that I would like to add. So let's do it. Let's have a look at these videos and expand on them. Of course, all of this is for educational purposes on fair use terms. So hopefully the BBC agrees with me using this on fair use terms. Okay, let's dive into the video.
I'm placing the electrodes.
I chose to be here. This was my choice. At least, I think it was. Most of you will believe that you chose to watch this video.
We do worry about manipulation by the media and by advertising and by other people and so on.
You freely willed it.
What is the degree of freedom that you give to the definition of free will?
Our choices define us.
So if that's what we're talking about, then we don't have free will.
But reality may not be so simple.
There you go.
In the early 80s, Benjamin Libit designed an elegant experiment to help us understand the mechanism of decision-making in the brain. This is the libit experiment. All I have to do is watch the spinning dot and click a button whenever I feel like it, then report to the scientist at what time I felt the urge to click. Meanwhile, my brain activity is being monitored. Most of us would assume that our choices register as an increase in brain activity and result in us clicking the button. But what's actually observed is a build-up of brain activity, called the readiness potential, a full second earlier than the conscious urge to click.
So you can already see where's this going, or at least I can see. I'm sorry if you can't. Basically, the argument that will be brought up, and that was basically the basis for this experiment, is, in my opinion, fallacious, and it comes from the religious perspective of that. Basically, there's a separation between your unconscious you and your conscious you, and basically the thing is that it says, oh, only the conscious is really you, so the conscious is separate with a soul from the body and you. So basically, if your unconscious brain with its action prepares stuff for you and helps you make a conscious decision, and if that happens before you consciously decide, apparently you didn't consciously decide and you have no free will. So I understand where this argument comes from, but I don't accept any of its premises. It's just flawed. It's basically based in the religious picture of a strict separation between the conscious soul part and the biological machine, the unconscious. And in fact, consciousness is a emergent property. So basically, every little atom, or that's my argument, every little atom and quantum of energy has some little bit of proto-consciousness, and in a biological brain like ours, consciousness arises, and there's unconscious parts of the brain, conscious parts of the brain, but they are really interconnected. You cannot say, this is the mechanistic part and this is the conscious part. It all goes hand in hand. It's an arising system. This argument is like saying, this computer didn't actually make this calculation because it used functions built into the operating system. Yeah, but the operating system is part of the computer. And so if the program uses functions from the operating system, it's still the program that does the actual thinking. Okay?
Has been replicated hundreds of times.
What are the implications of this kind of experiment? So, the folk definition of free will is that your mind controls your body, meaning that your mind is free to decide what to do and send the command to your body. But when you consider the libit experiment, it means that conscious intentions, instead of being the cause of motor preparation, is the consequence of an antecedent brain activity. So
the left one is the libertarian religious definition of free will and view of the human mind. and the right one is flipping this on his head, on its head. And in my opinion, both are wrong. I mean, it's interconnected. It's not the body controlling the brain or the brain controlling the body. Rather, it's the brain interacting with the body, the chemicals, the microorganisms that are what we are and that are involved in our decision making. So you cannot separate it. Both are equally flawed.
Is this dualistic view of mind-body causation.
And so in my group, we've gone back and redone all the libit experiments very carefully, and we find that you get a readiness potential even in the absence of a motor act, like doing this versus that, if a person expects something to happen. So my own guess is that the readiness potential is tied up with expectation or anticipation that something is about to happen.
Perhaps. So, in fact,
Yeah, great argument. That's a great guy. I agree with him on 90% of stuff. So just listen to that guy and ignore the others, more or less.
It's very difficult to know the exact way of, how it works exactly.
The experiment is over. My mind is no longer the controller. Rather, it's firmly seated in my conscious brain, guiding and responding to whispers from my subconscious. Right, I'm hungry. I need some food.
If you assume, there's only natural things in nature and there's nothing supernatural, well, events in the brain, including those events that lead to your conscious deliberations, have to have preceding events that perhaps were not conscious. But that doesn't mean that those events are causal.
But probably.
Exactly. This is exactly what I mean. There is events, there is cause and effect, but really what free will is, in my definition, is basically cause and effect are not the black and white mechanistics of the deterministic universe that they thought of in the 19th century, but rather with quantum physics in the picture and everything and basically the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, with everything being a little bit random. There is no way to say that cause and effect must cause something. And actually what our brain does is influence the possibilities of future outcomes and thus change the future.
Can say that a lot of our decisions, even not all our decisions, are the results of a prior brain activity. And as an example, there is an elegant study by the team of John Dylan Haynes who showed that by using neuroimaging measurements with MRI scanner, you can actually predict what will be the decision of participants.
Yeah, again, that's just, if you create an arbitrary separation between the unconscious and the conscious and say, oh, only the conscious part can be relevant for free will, you will end up with this. But just basically, if you have flawed premises, the rest of your argument is basically unimportant.
Before they are actually conscious of having taken that decision.
This begs the question, how can we have free will if our unconscious brain is making decisions before we do?
Oh, okay, so let me get to the...
Our unconscious brain before we do. That's basically exactly the problem. There is not a separation between the conscious we or I and the brain. It's the same thing.
Of the unconscious. So I don't deny that unconscious processes affect the decisions that we make.
But the unconscious is not unintelligent. The unconscious guides us in ways which is itself responsive to reasons.
Take the following scenario. I'm walking, over 8 months pregnant, hungry and very tired. When I listen into what my subconscious is saying, she's tired and hungry too. Strangely, she wants beans for lunch.
So what your unconscious does, basically your unconscious that has several purposes. It filters the information that comes in, because if you would basically your conscious processing power is very, very limited. So you must have filters before that, otherwise your consciousness would be overwhelmed. This is one of the important functions of your brain, to actually filter out a lot of information and also basically to go through your memories, both the biologically programmed ones that you inherited from your parents and the ones that you learned in your lifetime, and basically filter information and also pre-select possible strategies for you, because you just could not function if you had in every moment to do it. Just think about it. If this second, while I'm filming this video, I would need to think through every word, find that consciously in my brain, I would not function. Basically, my subconscious basically goes through the library of words in my head and presents me options of words that fit in the context. And for me, it's especially difficult since I'm filming this in English and my first language is German. So my brain has to be extra careful to pre-select the right words to give me English words and English grammar and not give me German grammar. That's not always perfect, but I'm not doing this consciously. I'm consciously switching around the words that pop up out of the unconsciousness, but I'm not consciously deliberating on every letter, every small sound, every mouth movement, because I just don't have the conscious processing power to do that. But that does not mean that I'm not involved in the decision or that the unconscious somehow is not me, because basically the unconscious is my biology, my memories, my experiences that form that.
Times we're influenced badly by unconscious reasons. There's no doubt about it, because advertisers do psychological experiments to find what we're sensitive to, and then they set up the environment so we make decisions through unconscious subliminal influences.
We know there's lots of examples of priming.
Even if we start from the kind of everyday, which baked beans do I choose in the supermarket, it's sort of quite easy to get from there to a genuine worry about whether you really made that choice freely when you pick that.
That is, of course, true. You can be influenced. You're influenced by brain chemistry that can be changed with medications or your surroundings. You're influenced by priming, by psychology. Yes, sure. But that's just how we are. And I mean, saying that this is true and then concluding we don't have free will, again, it just does not logically follow. It just means that your free will is not the ultimate libertarian free will, that you're just really only a rational actor and making choices 100% freely. But I mean, also this definition comes from religion, and it's just never had any merit in the world of science. So the only definition of free will that makes sense is one that accepts that, yeah, sure, you're limited, you're influenced by your past, by your surroundings. Yes. The main question is, can you change the future or not with your decisions?
Versus the own brand or whatever it is.
Fine, no beans then. Or am I just saying that because I feel my subconscious has been duped?
That might be a problem, but then that happens with conscious decision making too. People lie to us.
Once you start sort of pushing the boundaries of manipulation, it starts to be a really hard question. When are we sufficiently in control and when aren't we?
How can we step outside that and get outside those influences?
This is an important question, especially for the legal system. I mean, most countries have a very black and white legal system. So you're either fully responsible or fully not responsible because you're basically insane or mentally impaired or whatever. I think it's the Netherlands that have a 5-tiered system that actually assess how responsible you really were for that action and basically adjust the reaction and the punishment for your crime based on this scale. And this is why I find it so frustrating that so many scientists are working on a libertarian definition of free will and the separation of mind and body, because they're running in a completely wrong direction, and there's so much important work to do to actually find out how much we can really influence our decisions in each situation. Because basically, if we ever want to have an objective moral framework, if we really want to have a good justice system, we need to ask exactly these questions and find out exactly how to guide people to make better decisions. Because oftentimes, like we see now with the COVID-19 crisis, policymakers just accept, okay, they put out something and all people should just follow the law. And they think they are like turning a machine. But a population and humans don't work this way. And if they would spend more time actually evaluating their policy on really how can we make this work for humans, they are always thinking, also from a libertarian perspective, you just follow the law and that's it. But it's more complicated in reality. And what consciousness science should focus on, in my opinion, is exactly this question. How much in control are we in what situation?
can we even?
Yeah, no, we we can't. I mean, the best we can do is because we're human beings and we're incredibly clever. We're able to reflect on all of this stuff, right? So we're not just kind of following impulse.
May I add something?
We're human beings, we're incredibly clever. No, we aren't. We're much less clever than we think in most situations, which is why this is so important. Yes, we can reflect on stuff, and this is important, but just don't say we're intelligent. Most of the time, we're not.
Okay, go ahead, sure.
So we have to make a distinction between picking and choosing, or proximal acts of choosing and distal acts of choosing.
That is, decisions that require less effort, like picking oranges in the supermarket, are easily done by our subconscious, while our conscious mind can focus on more complex tasks, like whether to accept a job offer, or what to cook for a dinner party, and who to invite.
I think a lot of our decision making is playing out in this internal virtual reality of our imagination. And we spend about half of our waking day there imagining this versus that. And some of those imaginings or deliberations are not terribly consequential, like whom to invite for dinner. Others are very consequential, like whom should I marry? Or what country should I live in? And I want to argue.
That's exactly right. I told you this guy is great. I mean, this is exactly the point this comes down to. There's certain decisions that we just better leave to our habits, pre-programmed, unconscious thing. There are really important decisions that really have a big effect that we thoroughly think through over and over, both in an unconscious state, for example, when we sleep, but also very consciously. And this is the fascinating thing about the brain, how complex the decision-making process is.
Our internal virtual reality of our imagination is where free will is really active. It's not picking, as in the libit task. It's really an issue of choosing consequential decisions.
Right, I'm still hungry. I'm back at the beans. But I'll take some time to avoid any unconscious bean-based biases I may have and deliberate on which to buy.
If you want to call free will just our capacity to make intelligent decisions, which is hugely impressive, then I have no problem with that. In that case, you'd want to say, we have lots of free will, other animals have some.
This is a good point. I mean, I don't agree fully with his decision, because intelligent decisions, yes. I mean, that's undeniable that we can make intelligent decisions, and animals can too. And by the way, I mean, intelligence is not one metric. It's complicated. There's like social intelligence, emotional intelligence, like mathematical intelligence, and all that stuff. And for almost every category besides speech, you'll find an animal that is more intelligent in that regard than humans are. So I wouldn't say so fast that animals have some. Animals have intelligence, especially mammals. We know that they have very similar intelligence to us, or like octopuses. The main point is this intelligence. He says basically, if we have intelligence, the main question is this intelligence just like a computer, a classical computer, doing a calculation, and it's clear what the outcome will be when you have set the variables and started it? Or is there actual flexibility? Is there actually a recursion? Can this thing actually, by reviewing its prior decisions, actually change the future? So basically, if you could rerun the universe, would it always go the same way? So basically, if you're standing in front of a rack of clothes and you're choosing what you wear, and there's a blue sweater and a red sweater. If you reran the universe time and time again, would you always choose the red sweater, or would you choose sometimes the blue and sometimes the red? And that's the question at the core of free will, in my humble opinion.
The tiger can weigh its options. So we have this sort of first order deliberation in common with a tiger. However, in addition, humans have this sort of higher level or second order capacity to deliberate, namely to deliberate about our own future self.
And here's the
Yeah, again, and animals don't? Sure they do. You can so easily see this in animals. I mean, you would have to say that squirrels burying nuts for the winter is just programming. And sure, they think about where to hide the nuts. Is this a good hiding place for nuts? I need nuts because the winter is coming. Same goes for birds that fly to the south because they know winter is coming and I need to go somewhere else. And yes, the human capacity to reflect and to plan our future is certainly bigger than most animals, but just don't say animals can't do that. They can.
Thing. I felt much freer randomly clicking buttons for the libit test than I did when I started to overthink which can of beans to buy.
That's decision fatigue. You usually do stuff unconsciously because you only have a certain capacity in your conscious decision making, and not only that the bandwidth that I discussed before, but basically it's very hard for the brain to use a lot of energy, so it fatigues. The more conscious decisions you make in a day, the worse they get because your brain just gets fatigued. And this is why usually when buying beans, you do it unconsciously. You just select the brand that you always buy, because that is less taxing on your brain.
Certainly any of the big life stuff, where all sorts of constraints are put upon the possible choices I can make.
But within your constraints, you have a degree of freedom. What does that mean? We do have some freedom to act within the parameters given to us by
That's the best definition I heard in a very long time.
nature and by our society, and then those parameters that we set for ourselves, like deciding to learn a new language, or to go to the gym, or even to become a better person.
So do we have free will? Well, it depends on what you choose to call free will. If you want it to be your mind acting independent of your body, neuroscience says probably not. If you want your conscious self to be totally in control, again, probably not. But if you choose to locate free will in our conscious thought, then probably yes. Ironic.
As I said, this is one of the best problems and topics I've seen. I almost agree. It's just like, again, they're still working on this strict separation that only the conscious can be involved in free will.
Whether you choose to believe in free will or not is a question of choice.
When we spoke on the phone, you said you weren't sure about free will, and now you're saying you don't think we have it. Yeah. Because I'm just waiting for additional scientific evidence. It's just that at the moment, with what we know, it's hard to really believe in free will.
Yeah, it does not really work out, because our free will and how we make decisions and that we ourselves think we have free will is so fundamental to how we act that actually, basically, the extraordinary thesis is not having free will. You really need extraordinary proof to prove we don't have free will. It's even unconceivable to us, and I often notice this in discussions where people argue against free will, especially if they argue for a deterministic universe, that basically they contradict themselves so much or just go into an infinite regress beyond the Big Bang that just leads to, again, somewhere having been some choice made in a universe prior or by a god or whatever. Nobody that I've ever heard has made a consistent thesis of a world that has no free will. It just doesn't work. It's so deeply ingrained in our brains that we even can't wrap our head around not having free will. So basically, everything we see in nature and science suggests we have some portion of free will. And saying we don't is the extraordinary claim where you would need scientific evidence, because all the evidence we have says we have some degree of free will. That is, if you define it right. If you say, we need a separated mind from the body and the separate unconscious from the conscious, and only the conscious can be involved in free will, yeah, then it's difficult. But you're just basically, I don't have a good metaphor for this, but basically you're just, the game is chess and you're trying to play checkers or something. It's just, you're in the wrong film, mate.
Somebody, no matter the field in neuroscience, neurobiology, or physics, will find a new experiment.
Wait,
in order to show
why
that
did you
we
say
have free will
physics?
or not.
Yeah, and that's it. As they said here, the next video is physics. They actually have 3 very good videos. I'll do a commentary on the next video about the physics of free will as soon as I can, because this is to me the most interesting, because it's the most fundamental video on free will. Let me know in the comments what you think on free will. Please give the original video that I'll link a watch. And until next time, bye bye.